Welcome to this week's episode of Cooking with Connie. One of the things I have found over the years, there's a couple of things that you're going to find in some of the traditional recipes. It's a little bit harder and a challenge. So I'm going to teach you how to make some substitutions for that. So we're going to make a dairy-free, sugar-free, sweetened condensed milk. Going to open your whole world up to any of those recipes that calls for sweetened condensed milk and you want to decrease the sugar. Then we're also going to be doing a gluten-free cream of chicken soup, because most chicken soup, the cream of chicken soup is thickened with flour. So and we're going to kind of teach you how to decrease the sodium in that too, because that's going to be a very high sodium thing if you don't watch what you're doing with it. So we're going to start with the sweetened condensed milk. So I kind of talked about this before. I like to keep coconut milk powder at my house because I use that for a lot of different things. And so we're going to start with the coconut milk powder as our non-dairy milk. So we're going to use a cup of it. And this recipe is so simple, there's no cooking to it even. So we're going to use a cup of this. I've been in this for a while, so let me get my things out. All right, and we're just going to put it in. This is a NutriBullet here, but whatever type of food processor type thing you have. I have the Ninja at home that has the individual thing, and that's usually what I do mine in. So we use a cup, plus we're going to use 2 tablespoons of the coconut milk powder. Then we're going to introduce you to a new sugar substitute. It's called monk fruit with allulose. So allulose is another one of those non-caloric, healthier alternatives to sweeteners. It's derived from things like, they pull it from, it's naturally occurring in like figs and raisins and some of the fruits. But when they put it in the allulose form, it's going to give you the taste of sugar without all the calories and the carbohydrates. So kind of a win-win with it. And the nice thing about it, I've been doing some experimenting with it, you can use it to make your candies. So we're going to probably do those in the future, all right? So we're going to use 3/4 of a cup of the sweetener here. So I've got 1/4 of a cup there, and then we'll do the 1/2 a cup. All right, and then what we're going to do is just put the lid on here, and we're going to kind of pulse this for about 30 seconds to make it more powdery, and then then we're going to add the liquid part to it. Let's see here. Okay. So, now, the secret to this recipe, because we're not cooking it, is that we're using hot water. So what I've done is I've taken and put 1/2 cup of water in the microwave and heated it up. So I'm going to add that to this. So usually when you do sweetened condensed milk, what you're going to do is you're going to cook it down and you're going to cook the water out to evaporate it. So what we're going to do is we're just going to start with the concentrates, not add as much water, and then we don't have all the cooking time. And then we're also going to use 2 tablespoons of avocado oil. And you could use other kinds of oil, but I like avocado oil because it doesn't really have a taste to it, so it won't change the taste of it. I would not use olive oil in this. So avocado oil is probably your best bet when you're making this recipe. All right, and then all we have to do is blend this for a couple minutes, and voila, we're going to have if I get the lid on here, a dairy-free get some of that mixed up there so we don't have all of it on the bottom of it. And then if you want to, if you're not going to use it right away in your recipe, then I've got some of these containers here. They're about a cup size. So you could also store it. I think you could probably freeze it. I haven't tried it, but I would imagine you could, but you could store it for a little bit in the refrigerator. But you got a nice consistency here. You can kind of see it's nice and thick. So those recipes that call for that sweetened condensed milk, that'll be a great substitution. So you can make your fudges with it. And if you use your sugar-free chocolate chips with your fudges, you're going to end up with a sugar-free fudge that you can do for Christmas time or whenever. All right, we'll take a little pause and then we're going to get set up to do the cream of chicken soup. Okay, now we're going to start with our cream of chicken soup. So what we're going to start with is just 4 tablespoons of butter in here. And so one of the ways that I've modified this recipe is because cream of chicken soup, even when you find the recipe, calls for flour. So I'm using arrowroot to thicken it rather than flour. And the thing about arrowroot is that it thickens a lot more so I'm using about half of the amount of arrowroot in this. So once we get the butter melted, then we're going to add the arrowroot in here and kind of make our roux. That's what you call it when you do an oil and flour together, if for those of you who don't know that. So the other things I want you to kind of know is that I did find unsalted chicken broth. So this chicken broth that we're going to use today only has about 35 milligrams of sodium. Now, the chicken bouillon that we're going to put in there, it's not low sodium, and I don't know, you might be able to find something lower in sodium, but we aren't going to use that much of it. We're only going to use a teaspoon of it. And then the celery salt is going to have some sodium in it, but again, we're only going to use a third of a teaspoon of it, so we're not going to use very much of it. So we're still cutting back the sodium a lot in this recipe. And for those of you who are on low sodium diets, you could look for other things that are lower in sodium, like the bouillon and stuff like that, and even cut back even further. And you might and I took the actual salt that it called for and left that out of it, because I'm figuring if you've got the sodium in the bouillon, you're really not going to need the extra salt in this. So once we get this butter melted, they want you to cook it for about 3 minutes until it gets foamy. All right, so that's going to give us a nice hot butter, and it kind of helps get rid of, evaporate some of the moisture out of the butter to give you more of just the fats. So that was just part of the recipe here, saying that you should cook it for about 3 minutes. So it's to the point where it's pretty much melted. So we'll let it cook just a little bit longer. And then we're going to add, what I did was I went ahead and put all my seasonings in with my arrowroot, so everything's kind of together. And then we'll put that in there. And it's got, we haven't put that in yet, but I've got the onion powder and the garlic powder and black pepper and celery salt in there. So I just mix that with the arrowroot to make it kind of one step. We kind of place that on a hold while I wait this to foam up, and then we'll get you back in here again. All right, we're back now, and what I've been doing here, I went ahead and I added the arrowroot and the seasonings, and I've went ahead and cooked it. Again, just on a medium heat. You don't want to do it super high, but you want to keep whisking it so you don't end up burning the bottom of it. And then what we're going to do next is we're going to actually take this off the heat, and then we're going to start adding some of the chicken broth. So you're going to do this in about thirds. So add a little of the chicken broth. We're going to whisk it good. We're also going to add the milk. And what we've done with the milk is what we've tempered it. So we have heated that milk in the microwave for about 45 seconds. So that way when we add that, and this has got a nice thick consistency right now. So get this done. That's why really a whisk is your friend when you're doing this kind of stuff, because it's going to help with the lumps and the bumps. And like me, you make a mess with the whisk. All right. So we're going to add that warm milk to that, and that way when it's warm and when you've tempered it, it's not going to form the clumps. So that's one of the advantages of it. So you're going to do all this off of the heat, and then we're going to put it back on the heat and let it thicken up. All right. And then we're going to add a teaspoon of our bouillon. Now, the nice thing about this, if you're somebody that likes to do a lot of the casseroles and you're going to use a lot of the cream of chicken soup, you could make it up in advance. You could get you some containers that you could freeze it in. And so you could make up a big batch of it and then have it ready so that way you're not constantly making up the cream of chicken soup. It'll be ready for you when you need it. You just pull it out of the freezer, let it thaw for a little bit, and then use it in whatever recipes you're going to use it in. The reason I kind of did this is Barb gave me a challenge of this one recipe that we'll do in a few weeks, and it called for cream of chicken soup. Called for cream of chicken soup and it called for biscuits, so I had to get challenging with both of those, but it turned out mighty tasty. So we will teach you guys how to do that in a few weeks, but this week I just wanted to work on how to make some things that are going to make your life easier if you're trying to stay gluten-free and you're wanting to control what's going into your recipes. So we're going to go ahead and we'll just put this on hold while I let this come to kind of a boil and thicken up. All right, so here we have, and what I've done is I've poured that nice thick cream of chicken soup into a couple containers here. We'll let this cool, and then I would say you probably can store them in the refrigerator for a week if you're getting ready. Like I said, if you want to prep on the weekend and you know you're going to make a casserole, then you just put them in the fridge. But they're supposed to freeze well too, so it's going to be longer, or again, if you want to prep and do a whole bunch of them, get you some containers. These are about a cup, so it would probably be about the size you would get in a can of cream of chicken soup, I would guess. And then you could just freeze those, and then I would take them out and let them come to room temperature before I would put them in anything. So that's kind of how you could do some easy substitutions. It's going to open you up to be able to do a lot more with your recipes that you have out there. So learning to, adapt things easily, that's kind of what we're all about here, is teaching you how to create your recipes, and we'll bring more to you down the road. So that's it for this week's Cooking with Connie. Make sure that you make good choices, and we'll see you next episode.